What is up, guys? I got the train sim video that we've all been waiting for from Machine Rail now for a hot minute. I know everybody else has already done a review on it, but it's my turn. So today we got Machine Rail's Empire State Express number 999 and associated cars. This thrills me to death because I love this time period. I love modeling this time period. I love fiddling with this time period on train simulators. I like to read about it. This is my personal favorite time period for railroading as a whole. Now, unfortunately, I still haven't gotten to see my personal favorite railroad ever added to Train Simulator, but maybe one day. But yeah, this is one of my favorite time periods. I love this time period. This is the time of real innovation that really started to hit the railroads. We started to go big or go home, as some would say. We still had that that nice aesthetic appeal of the early to mid 1800s, but we're starting to get into the big, broody, powerful look of the 20th century. And this locomotive is kind of a testament to it. It's a little bit more of a testament to the speedy rather than the big heavy weight. But I probably should have stuck an early 1800s locomotive here next to this so that I could kind of show what I'm talking about. But yeah, this thrilled me to death when they said they were doing it, because I've never seen 999 done for Train Simulator or trains, and I have personally been up on this locomotive. Excuse me as I die, but I have personally been up on this locomotive, and so I always thought, it'd be really neat to see a locomotive that I personally have been up on added to Train Simulator, and I haven't had that opportunity up until now. So yeah, now the model in game is going to be a little bit different than the preserved locomotive as we see it today, because it's been through a few revisions since the locomotive was built, and I believe Machine Rail went for the as delivered design. So as these locomotives came to the New York Central, this is how it was supposed to look, or rather how it was. The locomotive we see today in Chicago that has been preserved, after its relatively short time period. I mean, these did not last very, very long, not compared to many others, such as the New York Central's Hudson class, the 464s. These locomotives didn't last very long because of that innovation that was going on at this time period. Railroads were changing vastly. Locomotives were getting bigger, faster, heavier, longer, blah, 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 blah. And the requirements for the trains were making those locomotives what they were. And it pretty quickly regulated the 440 wheel arrangement. I don't want to say useless, but it regulated it more to like branch line and road switching duties, because the trains were just getting so long and heavy by that point for major expresses and heavy passenger trains that just wasn't enough locomotive. So the preserved locomotive in the museum has smaller drive wheels. These big, tall, leggy drive wheels were done away with in one of the rebuilds after the locomotive was removed from the Empire State Express. And I believe it might have had a cab rebuild as well. Now, I think there's not a huge amount that was changed, but enough so that you'll look at it and go, it's not quite the same. The number one change is the drive wheels. They got significantly smaller after a couple rebuilds. So Machine Rails is an as-delivered model, but it's awesome. Now, there's really nowhere to make great historical use of this locomotive for a train simulator. We haven't had a route for this time period meant for this locomotive per se. So I am sitting on one of the New York passenger routes that's available that I never ever touch because I'm not a huge fan of modern routes, but this locomotive doesn't look too terribly out of place on something like the Pennsylvania steam route, the Bessemer and Lake Erie, that is available on Railworks America, or maybe some of the other stuff available on the workshop. But as far as actual official DLC goes, there's really not a lot of places to make this locomotive necessarily fit in per se. But there are some places, some routes, the Northeast Corridor, just about any route that begins in New York, that this locomotive wouldn't necessarily look out of place. New York, Chicago, the Chicago Metro line from G-Tracks from who knows how long ago now. But it's still, it's phenomenal. I dare say this is probably Machine Rail's very best model to date, without a doubt. And they do some good models, without a doubt. They do some really, really good models, but this is what I expect for DLC today. This is just phenomenally well done. Is it smokebox level of realism? No. I'd say Machine Rail has that smokebox level of detail with Victory Works style of simulation, so that it's relatively easy to play this locomotive using either the HUD like I have right now, or getting rid of the HUD and driving from the cab, or playing with an Xbox controller. Their models are already really, really friendly like that, but this locomotive easily catches up to Smokebox as far as detail goes, detail, texturing, all that fun stuff. And there are some perks and irks here and there, but there's perks and irks to everything. But when I think of 2022 DLC for Train Simulator Classic, 12-year-old game now, but this is what I am thinking about when I think of 2022 DLC. I'm sorry, but Dovetail Games just really has not been pushing decent DLC in the last 2 years that really complements the time. Some of their DLC that they've been pushing almost looks like it's been backdated in quality. But when I think of a $20 DLC, a locomotive pack, this is what I think of. This is outstanding. And it's not even $20. It's like $12, $15, I think. So for those of you that have experience with Machine Rail, especially now that they're starting to gain some fame, their website is in Brazilian dollars, and you can change that. For those of you that are new to Machine Rail, when you check out their website, that is not $60 to $80 USD. That is Brazilian dollars. There should be a click down tab. Change it to USD. It's not that expensive, trust me. But yeah, this ain't even $20. It's like 12 to 15 if I remember right. And you'll get the one locomotive, no variations, but you'll also get a full car set that they built specifically for this locomotive. And they are just as well done as the locomotive. Honest to gosh, they are awesome. Awesomely done. Awesome. And we're absolutely going to dive into them and check them out. Frankly, I think this is kind of what their Western Maryland packs should have been. Those Western Maryland H9s. Because I'll do a video on those later. I'm not going to talk too much about them, but it kind of frustrated me a little bit that they were They're like $12 to $15, I think, and you get the one single locomotive, and that's it. And they did 3 different variants as 3 separate DLCs, and I wasn't a big fan of that. I feel like they should have just combined them all in one pack. But this is peak machine rail quality right here. Now, as is typical machine rail, most of their models do not have dynamic numbering and such, so they do have, it's almost like Trains Z, where you have an individual locomotive with a set number and then a bunch of individual cars. That's pretty much how they did it. So each car has its own specified number, so that's why this pack is decently large, because you will get 2 different combine cars with 2 separate numbers that are not dynamic, one with an open door, one without, and then you'll get a handful of these regular passenger cars with individual numbers that are non-dynamic. You'll get an observation car. Now that one, I don't know if it has a dynamic number or not. I didn't set down 3 or 4 of these to see. I know you get at least the one. But yeah. So for giggles and squiggles, I'm going to do it a little bit backwards from a lot of the guys that have already done reviews of these. I'm going to start at the back with the cars and work our way forward to the locomotive. Why? Because once we start rolling, I find it a real pain to try to juggle looking at cars and whatnot. A. B, it's relatively quiet, so it's easy to do the cars right here while we're sitting in the station. So, we're going to dive into it. Starting from the very rear, oogity boogity boogity, right on down to the observation car. So let's get rid of our F4 HUD for actually. I'm gonna build up a decent fire for when we roll away. But starting from the back, working our way forward, as is typical machine rail quality. Nice crispy pinstriping going on here. Extra crispy lettering. I love the lettering. Now they do kind of blur out a little bit in a weird way. I gotta like get that right angle. You guys could see it a second ago when I was up there by the locomotive, but if you set it at a certain angle, the lettering kind of blurs to the rest of the car, which I find kind of odd, but it's not too terribly noticeable, especially when the train's at speed. Then you're not going to notice it anyway because the whole train's a blur. Now, I don't know if these tail lights are, if these marker lights are changeable or what have you. They do appear to be lit. I haven't tried them on a night map to see, or on a dark scenario, so not dead certain, but they do appear to be lit, which is nice. Excellent quality. Oh, another entertaining deal. So the observation car seems to have a fire going in the fireplace. So we have smoke coming out of the fire, out of the chimney. But the rest of the cars do not have smoke coming out of the chimney. So I guess our guys on the observation are freezing right now, and everybody else is just fine. Not a huge deal. Not exactly something you'll just notice all the time, but it's kind of one of those weird things that you're like, oh, okay. No fire in anybody else's car, but this one back here. So let's hop on down. Let's look under the car. They actually took the time to do the underneath rigging. Now, is it stellar? No. And you get all under here, and obviously you can see everything's pretty well modeled, but this is kind of where they took some liberties. The texturing is kind of blurry. Round things are kind of square. But all in all, it's not bad. It's kind of a neat thing that they took the time to add it in. I'm not going to say that it's, horrible, but it's not great. But again, it's not something you're really going to be noticing. I mean, you're not going to be sitting here driving the train from underneath the baggage cars and whatnot. But still, it's cool that they did it. Something we don't see a lot of. Typically, DLC packs with cars in them, they just have a black blur underneath. You can't see anything, but Pretty well done. Nice big heavyweight axles here. Now I see that texture. So we're gonna find out if these cars have the same issue that many of other machine rails a lot of other machine rail products, I don't know why, but the metal tires on their wheels don't spin. So the actual wheel itself will spin, but the silver tires on the wheels, especially on the locomotives, you'll notice it pretty broadly. This silver here, this will not move. It's pretty common on just about all their models. I don't know why, but not something that you'll necessarily notice, but it's definitely there. It's just kind of one of those little bugs that maybe they haven't figured out how to work out yet. But nice crispy looking cars, crispy detailing, and they all have a really nice interior. Really nice interior. I love the period, the posters. Love the period posters. Now, these were supposed to come with they had pictures. I am and I'm not. I kind of wish they had added it as a, kind of like a duo, a second version of this entire train set. But these were supposed to have a nightlight view, so whenever it was dark, all these cars would be lighted, and they had pictures of it on their webpage, and I believe they didn't implement it because of the strain it would put on a lot of people's computers. It would not be low-end computer friendly. They said that the shadow effects inside of all these cars, if you had this full set down, you wouldn't have another train down because it would eat your frame rates like nobody's business. So I don't think they implemented it. I'm just going off of the fact that these lights are not lit right now. No fire or anything. None of these are lit. So I'm a little bit sad at that. I don't know if my computer would be able to handle it. I know I built my computer around being able to run Train Simulator, and I still have issues with Train Simulator. Not so much from frame rate issues, though, more from core program issues, because Dovetail Dames doesn't believe in fixing their shit anymore. Sorry, excuse my language. But yeah, I'm a little bit sad about that. I think that would have been stupid cool if they had maybe added like a secondary pack. So kind of like Smokebox does with their packs with his locomotives, where you have a standard definition and a high definition. It would have been kind of cool if Machine Rail had done that with this pack, where you had a standard definition where all these lights are not lit and it's optimized for everybody to be able to use, and then a high definition for people that have a higher end computer to be able to run, that have the lighted car interiors and whatnot. Because from the photographs it looks really good. It's the first time I have ever seen that kind of quality done for the cars. Typically our DLCs over the years for Train Simulator have always been focused on the locomotive or the route. I have never seen this kind of work and love put into the actual rolling stock itself. Now, there are rolling stock packs out there, don't get me wrong. There are decent rolling stock packs out there, and I'm just talking about North America. I'm not looking at any other country stuff. I do have other country stuff. I'm not talking about that right now. I'm just talking about North America. There are other rolling stock packs out there, and there are other rolling stocks included with locomotives and routes and whatnot. But all too often, especially with route packs, it's just reskins of decade-old models. And with locomotives, it's, depending on the time period, it's either with more modern stock, it's again just reskins of decade-old stuff, or it's with older stuff, with older locomotives. Especially, we've been seeing a lot now with some of those retro packs. They're Great Northerners rolling stock, which is nice in its own sense. but a lot of his stuff is a decade old and a freeware. You don't have to pay for it. So this is what I expect out of payware rolling stock. This looks awesome. I love it. But yeah, a little bit sad that we don't get the lighted interior. But yeah, I get it. I get why they had to do away with it. I love this car. Look at these big old plush seats. You know how comfortable this would be, you know, back in the day. Taking a train trip. This right here is what you got. Doesn't get more manly than this. Am I right, guys? Got a bottle of whiskey. Nice big cigar. Nice couch. Sit down here in our nice smoking interior. Kidding. I haven't had a cigar since I got out of the military. That was a hot minute ago. So on to our coach class cars. These are a little more typical of what we'd see for everyday services. Not the most comfortable for distance travel, but not too bad. Not too shabby. It's not some just outstanding looking. I'm kind of sad that we don't have any kind of fire going on here. You don't hear any fire noises, but it is what it is. Just really, really good looking cars. Boop, boop, boop. Now here we got a we call a combination car. So it's a half passengers, and the front half is for mail, baggage, express freight, anything that you might be. Mostly what the passengers would be bringing along, but anything that might absolutely have to go with the train. So like here we got our luggage for our passengers, maybe a couple freight items that are going express mail or some whatever. But it's kind of cool that they modeled this. You know, it's not something that you would necessarily see, especially while playing, but you know, it's there. It's kind of that knowledge that it's there. So maybe you want to set up a scene or set up some videos, and you know, you're popping in and out of here. It's cool that they included that. But just excellent detail work on the cars. Excellent detail work. And now for the part that everybody actually wants to see, the locomotive. That's what everybody's here for. Let's not kid ourselves. Cars are cool, but most of you here for the locomotive, especially you reskinners, probably going to take this locomotive and reskin it to a dozen different railroads so that we can make more use out of it. But as is typical, outstanding texture quality. Speaking from experience dealing with trains, I know this right here has to be an absolute headache. Trying to get all this mess to line up and look halfway decent with these blasted rivets here. So kudos to them for making that look nice and smooth. I know ever too common nowadays. We get DLCs and the rivets are photo textured on. They're not an actual physical thing added on. Smoke box, yes, but a lot of like the diesels that we've seen, the rivet detail and the panel detail, it just be flat. So I love the fact that the machine rail takes the time to actually do rivets. I know that has to be a headache too. Great looking locomotive. Nice big tall drivered. Now this locomotive was a little bit unusual in its time period for all the brakes. So by this point, train brakes were becoming a thing. A lot of earlier stuff, all you have is locomotive brakes, and then you have to individually go through and set handbrakes. But this locomotive was innovative in the fact that it had it had train brakes all the way through, air brakes. And brakes across the whole locomotive. So we have brakes on our pilot truck, which is a little bit odd, but Brakes on our pilot truck. We have brakes on our main drive wheels. We have brakes on our tenders. So this locomotive had the ability to stop pretty quick for its time period. Now, I don't know. I have a feeling they had to take a little bit of a liberty on the coloring, because to my knowledge there are no color photos of 999 during its Empire State days. So I'm guessing that this is kind of a guesstimation as to what it looks like off of black and white photos. So I find it kind of interesting that the front of the smoke box is black and the rest of the boiler is silver. It's kind of different. I mean, it's not ugly. I like it. It reminds me of a locomotive that is sitting at the Ford Museum in the Roundhouse. I believe it's a big 442 Atlantic. Roundabout from the same time period, actually. Big, tall, leggy drivers. A nice, clean appearance. You know, we don't have all the big appliances hanging off the side of the locomotive. We don't have all the bells and whistles that you typically see on more modern locomotives, like the big boy packs and whatnot. It's just a really clean look overall, but still like a big locomotive. For what it is, for 440, it's a big engine. So it still has a pretty aggressive, powerful look to it, while still having that clean, colorful aesthetic of earlier time periods. I love it. Now, I don't know how true this is, because by this point, I don't know how you would use that. But on the front, we've got the old Lincoln pin style coupler on our plow here, and then we hop to the back and we can see our obvious knuckle couplers. So I don't know how true that is. I don't know if that was a thing at this point, because I don't know how you would push the locomotive around or how you'd use it from the front if that's the case. But yeah, somebody educate me. I love to learn new things. I know on my native state of Texas, on the Moscow, Camden, and San Augustine, back in their earlier days, they used to mix Lincoln pin and knuckle couplers with a weird kind of system, so that they didn't have to dump a lot of money into their rolling stock right off the bat into converting everything to knuckle couplers. So that might be how it works. I don't know, but overall, I don't hate their smoke effects, but I don't like this either. I don't like that. I like the effect. I don't like the fact that it has a point where it just goes up, balloons, and stays there. I kind of wish that it was a little more wispy and like disappeared before balling up like that and just sitting there. But you know, it's probably one of my really only major complaints with this pack. That and the fact that our wheel tires still don't rotate. That's a little irk I've got, but again, nitpicking at small details, because as a whole, this whole set is just mind-blowingly awesome. Just great looking locomotive. Great looking locomotive. Now, I know from previous review videos, the brake shoes do not move, and I know from fiddling around with this, we got a hot fire now, but I know from fiddling with it around a little bit that the Johnson bar lever here moves, but the actual gearing inside does not. So they still got a little bit to go, a little ways to go with their detailing and modeling if they're trying to get to smoke box level, but I'm not going to complain. Again, these are kind of details that you don't, especially with the inside valve gear like this, you really won't notice that being adjusted while you're on the road. So I like that they modeled the actual J-bar itself moving, because that is the one thing you would notice that, but inside here you won't notice a lot of that when you're on the road. Just a phenomenal looking locomotive. Flick on our headlight here. Typical quality machine rail headlight. I love that headlight. I love their headlight effects as a whole. They know how to do a headlight. Honest to gosh, they do. Yeah. Instead of looking like a bright LED dot on the map, kind of fades out. It's a great looking headlight. Love their headlight effects. Their headlight effects are just awesome. Now our marker lights are lit. I don't know. Can you change them? It used to be U. Nope. Can't change the marker light colors, but they are lit, so you know, cool beans. Cool beans indeed. Another kind of cool effect. I mean, it kind of blurs out whenever I get up close to it, but the kind of the pitting in the metal from age use and actual casting. So it's a weird little detail. You won't notice it until you get up next to a locomotive this old in real life. This is from a time period where it was a lot of casting, pot metal, sheet metal. Sheet metal wasn't really in use. You're talking cast iron, pot metal, heavy, porous metals. And you see that here. It's a very porous metal, which, like I said, it's not something you really think about until you stand next to a quote-unquote modern steam locomotive from like the 30s, 40s, and one of the late 1800s locomotives like this. It's one of those weird little things you notice. There's definitely a difference in the way they're built, and I like that you can see that here. So let's hop in it and listen to it. Let's take it on the road. Let's be sure our switches are open so that I don't end up in a not so happy place. Flick that one, flick that one, flick that one. Main going that away. That puts us out on the open road. It sure does. Cool. So, first things first, let's flick on our bell. Great sounding bell effect. I love their rope effect. I love what they got going on the rope. Now granted, it is a little repetitious. I mean, it's still computer modeling. It's hard to make this go wild. But I love the fact that it flexes and stretches. It's a nice little touch. And it does it inside too. Again, a nice little touch. A little wonky. Just a little bit wonky, but it's alright. Let's see, inside the cab, just about everything is touchable. And unlike a lot of their early models where you couldn't individually open, so I know like their some of their the earlier 440, the 460, or the 260s, whatnot. Just opening one door will open all of the windows and doors. So that has changed with this locomotive. You can open each individual door, window, and such. Open a roof hatch, fun stuff like that. And it does translate outside. So, nice little effect. They've come a long way. Without a doubt, the best hooter whistle in this game. Period. I dare say one of the best hooter whistles in train simulators across the board. Excellent sounding whistle. Good sounding brake effects. Again, I love the porous metals. Put our brake up to running here. And Open our throttle up. Again, great sounding locomotive. Cylinder cocks aren't too bad. Spin the wheels. No. Sad days. Ooh. Pretty decent sounding coast. But that changeover just then, you guys heard that. That chuff rate change right there could have been blended a little better, I think. It's not horrible, but it could use a little fine tuning. It doesn't blend too well. You hear that kind of immediate swap from a slower chuff to a higher chuff rate. Not too terrible. So here you guys can see what I was talking about earlier. The tires on their wheels, the metal tires, do not actually spin. It's weird. But the axle and the wheels are actually spinning. You guys can kind of see it as it goes by, but they actually took the time to do the molded build plates and such on the wheels. It's really neat. Nice little touch of detail that, I don't necessarily notice while it's going, but again, it's great. Machine shops of the New York Central and Hudson River Railroad, West Albany, 1893. I would say this is probably one of Machine Rail's #1 little details that they do. It's probably their best little detail too, is their number plates, their builder's plates and such. They're just phenomenally well done. And look at that number plate. You can't tell me that doesn't look outstandingly better than just about every other model available for Train Simulator. That is such a good looking number plate. Now, the injectors are kind of loud, and they're not... From here, I don't think they should be that loud, especially over the rest of the ambient sounds of the locomotive. Is it horrible? No. But it's definitely loud. Very loud. Although we're doing 26 miles an hour, and this locomotive looks like it's barely moving. Which, that's how it's supposed to be. The larger the driver on a steam locomotive, the faster that it is built to operate. Typically, the larger drive wheels... steam locomotives have a weird little effect. The larger drive wheels mean that their tractive effort is lower, but they'll operate at a much higher, safer speed. So the larger drivers typically are used on passenger and express trains, for trains that are meant to get up to 80, 90, 100 mile an hour. You can see that especially with European locomotives, especially German locomotives. It is most blatantly obvious. They'll have some massive drive wheels on their express locomotives and tiny little drive wheels on their freight locomotives. But that's typically how steam locomotives work. Larger drive wheels are meant for high speed passengers and such, and that is exactly what this locomotive was designed for. So that's why at 20 mile an hour, it still looks like we're barely moving. Such a good sounding whistle. One of their best whistles to date, without a doubt. Forgot to show, cars do have passenger views to them too, which is really nice. And we have a nice little platform view. Now I noticed something with these cars earlier with my testing. But weather doesn't. Weather effects are a little weird. So, say you've got it set to raining right now. The rain will come through. It will not come through where your camera is. So right about where this lantern is down, it's like a wall. And there's no rain in this area. But from that lantern forward, the rain will come through the model, which doesn't irk me. If I like to sit back here, it irks me. But you don't see it in the cab of the locomotive, so not too terrible a thing to notice. It's just kind of one of those things that you'll notice if it's raining and you're like, oh. But we do have cab view, or tender passenger views, and a bunch of different views. You know, here we are sitting in the crapper right now. Only 2 views with the regular coaches. Can we sit up here? Sitting inside the baggage compartment. Sitting back in the... Nah, the combine car does have a platform view, which I found interesting, because the rest of these don't. Other than the observation. So that's a little different. I mean, not that I don't like it. It's just cool. Different view, different. Oh yeah, the Herald is lit too. The Empire State Express Herald. Like I said, their number boards, their lettering is on point. It's excellently well done. Now this is not a powerhouse of a locomotive, and with this 6-car train set, you typically are going to be operating around, I think I've got it up to about 80, 85. But this locomotive is famous in the United States and around the world to some extent, but it's famous in the United States for setting an unofficial speed record for steam locomotives at the time period. So, as you see, there's no speedometer in this locomotive. So you gotta guesstimate how fast the locomotive is going. Well, the crew, with a relatively short train, I believe a 2 or 3 car train on a night, they claim to have hit, I believe, 112.5 miles an hour with this locomotive in this configuration. And at that time, it would have been the world's fastest recorded speed for a regular steam locomotive, for a land vehicle at that point. It would have been actually the world's fastest, period. But they say it allegedly because, like I said, there was no official timekeeping, there was no official record, there was no way to officially prove or disprove the claim. There's no speedometer. There wasn't anybody officially sitting there with a time watch, you know, doing the proper calculations. It was just off of the word of the crew and those that were there at the time. So it is unofficially the first, I believe the other part of it that makes it famous is it's unofficially the first locomotive to have gone over 100 miles an hour. I don't know. I'm not dead certain about that part. I just remember the part about the 112 part. I know the locomotive hit, allegedly, I say that lightly because I don't want to say, you know, yes or no, it did happen. It's just according to the crews that were operating the locomotive at the time, it did, according to them, hit 112 miles an hour, and it was indeed the fastest land vehicle at the time. So that's what makes this locomotive in itself so famous in the United States, famous a little bit around the world. I know the British A4 Pacific class was the one that actually got the official recorded record for world's fastest steam locomotive. Go Team USA, we're trying to disprove that with the T1 being built today, because allegedly the T1 was able to hit 140. Guess we're going to find out. But the A4 Mallard has the world's official title of officially fastest steam locomotive. But 999 was supposedly the one to have set that record previously. It was supposed to have unofficially had that world speed record. So, just a little bit of the back history. Yeah, this is an awesome pack. Such an awesome pack, especially for the Northeast Corridor routes and whatnot. It's a lot of fun where, you know, your speed limits are typically, 60, 70, 80 mile an hour. Some of the other routes 120. Really give use to these long, tall, leggy driver locomotives. Let's see if we can get it up to speed here. Now, I am not quilling the whistle, just, FYI. That is not me. That is just part of the playthrough tune. If you hold your whistle button down, it'll play through that little bit of whistle there. But I love listening to it. Man, it's such a good sounding whistle. We're about to come to the end of our little trip here. Guess we get to find out how quick this locomotive will stop. Here we are, oogie boogieing, almost 80 mile an hour. Now it'll grab 80 pretty quick. It'll grab 80 and it'll maintain 80 pretty quick on relatively level ground. Let's throw it in emergency and see how quick it stops though. Now, like I said, this is one of the first full train sets back in the day that it was fully equipped with air brakes all the way throughout the train. So the fact that we're stopping this quick is mind-blowing for the time period. Is it a modern train? Not quite. But we're stopping pretty quick. Especially from 80 mile an hour, just about that stretch right there. It's about what it took us to go from 80 to 0. I love that little squealing as the train comes to a stop. You get that little squealing noise. It sounds great. But yeah, guys, the Machine Rail 999 Empire State Express pack. Highly, 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 highly recommend it. This is, in my opinion, the very best pack that they have put out to date. Even over their H9 consolidations. And those are great models, don't get me wrong. But this is without a doubt the best pack that they have put out, in my opinion. Just such an awesome, awesome looking pack. Awesome looking locomotive. Great fun. You will absolutely love it if you pick it up, trust me. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. This is my review of the Empire State Express from Machine Rail. Hope you guys like it and go pick it up.